Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Car on the Hauler, my post-race show. I am Trackside Larry, host of Car on the Hauler here on Spotify and on YouTube. And we'll be discussing everything that we saw in HOT-Lanta, Atlanta Motor Speedway, Echo Park Speedway, whatever you want to call it, the hottest ticket in NASCAR, the Dale Jr. calls it. And I would agree, we had great racing all weekend long. But let's start with the Craftsman Truck Series. All right, real quickly before we talk about the Craftsman Truck Series, we have to go through the weekend results, the weekend winners, and a points update from all three series. Let's start with our weekend winners and give a quick spotlight to our three weekend winners. Of course, Tyler Reddick winning the Auto Trader 400, a great celebration, a great moment to see 2311 go back-to-back to start off the year, especially after the court case. I think a lot of people, including myself, were questioning if we'll even see Tyler Reddick racing for 2311 this season because they gave him the availability, the freedom to go somewhere else if this all didn't work out with the court case. And luckily it worked out. Luckily, Reddick was able to stay there, and luckily 2311 and Michael Jordan were able to stick around. Then we'll look at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and I don't know if I think this is the happiest I've ever been for a driver winning a race. I've met Sheldon Creed at least a half a dozen times, and I'm so pumped for the dude, man. I'm so pumped for him. I can't even explain how excited I am and happy I am for him to finally get a win after 15 runner-up finishes. That was just a beautiful moment, and I hope he drank all the Coors he could find. I was so happy for him. I did see he had to drink some Busch Lights in Victory Lane. I loved Austin Hill, by the way, coming into Victory Lane to celebrate with them. Some people that follow Sheldon and know Sheldon know that him and Austin Hill are actually really good friends off of the racetrack. I think that's been misconstrued, and not surprisingly, after everything that happened at Martinsville with RCR a couple of years ago. Just an awesome moment for Sheldon. And then my boy Rowdy, Kyle Busch, gets back to Victory Lane, winning in the Truck Series, winning his third straight race in the Craftsman Truck Series at HOT-Lanta. In a great moment for him and Brexton, I would say, because his son Brexton, he hasn't seen his dad win a race in quite a long time. I think the last time Brexton was there for one of his wins is when they were doing the celebratory tossing Brexton in the air in Victory Lane. I don't think Kyle Busch can do that anymore. He ended up doing that with his daughter instead in Victory Lane. I did see that video. Just a really great weekend overall when it comes to racing. We had three great stories winning. Of course, Kyle Busch hasn't won in around a year in any of the national series, hasn't won a cup race in a couple of years at this point. Obviously, Sheldon Creed finally getting his first win. That's a great moment. And then a great moment for the sport with 2311 and Tyler Reddick winning. So let me move on to the top 10 results from all three series. We'll start with the trucks. Rowdy with the victory, and his new best friend, according to Carson Hocevar at least, Hocevar getting second place. Hocevar, as Travis Pastrana would call him. I still love that. Travis Pastrana is saying Hocevar. Third, Gio Ruggiero. I thought he was going to win. I really thought he was going to win this race. He was also my pick at the beginning of the day. I thought he had a great shot. Ben Rhodes. Honestly, all the Thor Sport cars looked fantastic all race long. Not very many. Only had two of them get in the top 10. Ben Rhodes with the top 5. But the Thor Sport cars, the trucks I mean, were probably the best trucks in the field. Heim time continued where he left off. I think he ended up winning stage 1 in this thing, driving the number 1 for Tricon Garage. It was cool to see Heim time back out there in the truck series and was very competitive. Chandler Smith, fresh off his victory, gets 6th. Jake Garcia recovered from his troubles last week in Daytona when he ended up, in my opinion, wrecking Tony Stewart and ended up ruining his own day as well. But those Thor Sport cars were very fast. John Hunter Nemechek gets an 8th place finish for Stuart Friesen. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. getting a 9th place finish. And then Justin Haley rounding out your top 10. Another top 10 for Ram to start the year, who have started off this year a little bit better than I think a lot of people expected. We'll look at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series top 10. Sheldon Creed getting the win. That's just awesome. And Parker Retzlaff, some of you that follow me on X saw that in the late moments of that race, Parker Retzlaff took 4 fresh tires, and I thought he was going to drive through the field and get a victory, and he came 1 spot short. He got second place in that number 99 for Viking Motorsports. Retzlaff is winning a race this year. That kid is way too talented. He outperforms all the equipment he ever gets in. Same thing with Nick Sanchez with the 3rd place finish for AM Racing. Great job by Sanchez. Was threatening to actually win the race near the end of that thing. And then Corey Day, he had a long day, got into a lot of accidents, but still managed to get a top 5. Jesse Love rounded out the top 5 as the highest finishing RCR car. Great race from him. Chastain came so close to winning that race. Obviously, he had the incident with Austin Hill in the back straightaway, got 6th. Sam Mayer celebrated a little bit too hard and destroyed his car in the infield post-race, celebrating for Sheldon Creed, ended up getting 7th. Rajah Caruth, who in my opinion was the driver of the day, getting 8th. Taylor Gray getting 9th. And then Brandon Jones rounding out your top 10. And then we'll look at the NASCAR Cup Series, the Auto Trader 400 top 10. Tyler Reddick, back-to-back victories. Great for him. Chase Briscoe getting P2. Briscoe had one of the best cars in the field. Came just short of getting that win at Atlanta. Ross Chastain was making noise all race long, getting 3rd place. Carson Hocevar was the show of the race. He was the most entertaining driver all race long, gets 4th. Daniel Suarez had a fantastic run in the number 7. A very strong start of the season, I would say, for Suarez with his new race team, rounding out the top 5. SVG, very impressive. Very impressive. He's improved on the ovals quite a bit. He went sliding through the grass twice in this race. Still managed to get a top 10. Zane Smith has started off the season with 2 top 10 finishes, almost winning the 500 last week and then getting 7th this week. So good on him. You can say the same thing for Bubba Wallace. Almost won the 500, almost won this week, got a top 10 in 8th. Ryan Preece has done well to start the year in 9th. And then Ryan Blaney rounding out your top 10. Some impressive drivers in that top 10, some unsuspecting drivers in that top 10. I think a couple of those drivers, most notably for me, Parker Retzlaff, I think are going to have a surprisingly very strong season. Let me get now to the points update for all 3 series, the top 3 in points, and the bubble battles for the trucks, O'Reilly Series, and the NASCAR Cup Series. In the Truck Series, Chandler Smith has the points lead over Gio Ruggiero in 2nd with 28 points back. Ben Rhodes, 35 points back in 3rd. And then the bubble battle looks like this. You have Caden Honeycutt in 7th, who is 50 points behind Chandler Smith. You have Andres Perez, who has had a very strong start of the season and a tie for 7th with Caden Honeycutt, also 50 points back of Chandler Smith. You have Tyler Ankrum, 9th in points, 52 points. I keep on misspeaking here. 52 points back of Chandler Smith. And then on the cut line is Christian Eckes, 56 points back of Chandler Smith. And then the 2 drivers just outside the cut line in 11th and 12th are both Ram colleague drivers. You have Daniel Dye, 3 points back of Eckes, and then you have Justin Haley, 5 points back of Eckes. Now we'll look over at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, where Austin Hill has the points lead. 22 points back of him is Rajah Caruth. 3rd in points is Sheldon Creed, 24 points back. And then we look back at 9th in points. The bubble battle, Sammy Smith is 56 points back of Austin Hill. You have Ryan Ellis, who's had a very strong start of the year, 58 points back. You have Taylor Gray, 60 points back. And then you have a tie at the cut line. The edge I give to Brennan Poole, who's 61 points back of Austin Hill, but he's also tied with Patrick Staropoli, who's technically 13th in a tie at the cut line. And then 1 point behind the cut line in 14th is Josh Bilicki. And now we'll look over at the NASCAR Cup Series, the top 3 in points. You have Tyler Reddick After winning the first two races, almost has a full race advantage on second in points. Bubba Wallace, 40 points up on Bubba Wallace, 44 points up on Chase Elliott in third. And then we look back at 13th in points, the bubble battle, William Byron, Willie B, 75 points behind Reddick. A real questionable move on that back straightaway, by the way. I don't know. That was, in my opinion, that was a dumb move. He wrecked himself and he wrecked Cindric. Cindric had a good shot. 75 points back of Reddick. You have Ryan Preece, 76 points back of Reddick in 14th. You have Chase Briscoe and Shane Van Gisbergen tied for 15th, both 80 points back of Reddick. And then just outside the cut line, you have two Kaulig cars once again, just like the Truck Series. You have Ty Dillon, 1 point behind SVG and Briscoe. And then you have AJ Allmendinger, 2 points behind SVG and Briscoe. And that'll do it for the update in points, top 10 results, and our weekend winners. Let me know your thoughts about the top 10 results, anybody that stands out to you in particular, and let me know how you feel about the points and how the points are going so far to start this year. The first thing we'll discuss when it comes to the trucks is the fact that it was a timed race. They said beforehand that it was going to be a timed race. It was going to end at 4:20 p.m. That's when they said the race was going to end because it got slightly delayed due to weather. I think a lot of people thought coming into the day, including myself, that we were going to get a bunch of rain, potentially even have a triple header on Sunday at Echo Park Speedway. Luckily, that didn't happen. The weather stayed away. And I'm kind of at two minds when it comes to the timed race. One of those minds is like, well, we don't have any weather right now. Why can we not finish the race? The track has lights. We can go deeper into the night. We just got to push the O'Reilly Series race back a little bit, and we can get in a full race. And they almost did. I think there was, 10 or 15 laps left in this thing when it finished up, and we'll talk about the finish here in a second. But they could have finished the race, technically, because we didn't have any more impending weather. They have lights at the racetrack, but that didn't happen, which irritated me. It's like there's only a couple of laps left. We could have gotten the rest of the race in. I'm not going to lie. In the moment, it really pissed me off, for sure. It definitely really pissed me off. But then on the other side of it, the other mind on this would be they warned the drivers well in advance, so there wasn't necessarily any advantages from that. So all the drivers knew going into it, all the teams knew going into it once the green flag dropped that once we got to 4:20 p.m. that there was only going to be one lap left, that they were going to get the white flag and finish up the race. So on that aspect, I was okay with it. As long as the drivers are okay with it, I'm usually okay with it. And then also from that perspective, well, kind of from both perspectives, I would say from both minds is the CW versus Fox part of this. Because I feel like that's ultimately why we didn't see the race go full distance, is that Fox and CW couldn't come to some sort of agreement. If everything was on Fox like it used to be, and I'm not complaining because I think CW did a phenomenal job, and I'll talk about the CW booth a little bit later, but if it was all on Fox, I don't think we would have had any issues. I think they would have just pushed back the O'Reilly Series race a little bit, and we wouldn't have had any problems at all. But because CW has that time slot, CW didn't want to jump off of that time slot is kind of what I'm thinking when it came to all this. CW didn't want to jump off the time slot, and that's their right. That's their time slot. They paid money for that, and that's what they came to the agreement on, that we're going to end the race at 4:20 p.m. because the O'Reilly Series race was starting right afterwards. So I'm mixed about it. Overall, I guess now that I've sat on it for a little bit, I guess I'm a little bit more okay with it than during the race. I was pissed, but after the fact, I thought about it more. I'm like, I came around a little bit on it, but I'm still not very happy because I want the race to go full distance, especially without there being any weather or anything. I would have really liked for it to go full distance, but Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What did you think about there being a timed race for the Craftsman Truck Series in Atlanta? Okay, let's get to the finish of this Truck Series race, because overall, it was a very entertaining finish. I had a big feeling that Gio Ruggiero was going to end up taking the dub of this thing, but to no surprise, Rowdy, Kyle Busch, my favorite driver, ended up taking the dub at Atlanta, his third straight win at Echo Park Speedway in the Craftsman Truck Series. With, I think, the biggest story of the finish was he won with an unlikely friend who was a teammate this weekend. I think Kyle Busch has made it pretty clear, and anytime he's been asked about Carson Hocevar, that he is not necessarily a huge fan of Carson Hocevar, which I personally find a little bit ironic just because Hocevar reminds me of a young Kyle Busch. But he had help from Carson Hocevar at the end of this thing. Hocevar pushed him to the victory, even joined him in the celebrations, came down to victory lane as well. Very interesting, and they had very interesting interactions on social media afterwards. Hocevar was saying pretty much that they're best friends now, and Rowdy was like, Let's slow your roll on that. Let's slow your roll on that. Let's chill. That's pretty much what Rowdy said. And I loved the finish of this thing. Rowdy getting back to victory lane. That's awesome. Hocevar and Rowdy working together. That's awesome. I hope that Rowdy after this maybe takes Hocevar under his wing a little bit now that he knows Carson a little bit better and knows him a little bit more. I personally would love to see Kyle Busch take Carson Hocevar under his wing because I think Hocevar has all the talent in the world. He just has zero racecraft. Well, not zero. Let me not go that far. There's definitely some racecraft, but very little, especially compared to a lot of his Cup Series competition. His talent is through the roof, but his racing IQ and his racecraft is very, very, very low. And he needs to improve on that. If he can improve on that, I think we're going to see him get a lot of victories because ultimately that racecraft and that racing IQ, I think, is ultimately what cost him a chance at the win in the Cup Series race. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what a finish. I loved the celebration too. Brexton hasn't been to a win for Rowdy in a long time. He hasn't been in attendance for a win in a long time. And Brexton, his son, ran across the infield and jumped on his dad's back. That was very cool to see. Kyle Busch getting out of the car and paying tribute to Ricky Hendrick, who Ricky was one of his best friends for a long time. And obviously Ricky lost his life all those years ago. And just a little bit of a paying homage, paying tribute to his friend, Ricky Hendrick. I think a lot of people didn't notice it at the time, but when he got out of the car and put his hat backwards because that's what Ricky did. That's what Ricky Hendrick did, and I really like that. Him driving Ricky's old paint scheme on the number 7 Spire car. Also, I would love to see Rowdy back at Hendrick. I think that's a pipe dream personally, but I would love to see him back at Hendrick next year or at some point. But it was just awesome. It was awesome to see Rowdy get back to victory lane, even though it was the Truck Series. Ultimately, I want him to just get back to victory lane in the Cup Series. I don't care that much about him winning in the truck just because I'm so focused on him winning a Cup race once again. But nonetheless, it was great to see him get back to victory lane. It was a great moment with himself, Brexton, and paying homage to Ricky Hendrick. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. What did you think about the finish? What do you think about Kyle Busch and Carson Hocevar doing a little shake and bake and becoming best friends? How do you feel about that? All right, let's move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and a great race. I'd say I don't know if the O'Reilly race or the Cup race was the better race. I was very impressed by the Cup race this weekend. The O'Reilly Series race was very entertaining. We had some great racing all day. We definitely had some gnarly crashes, though, as well. And the big perpetrator, I'd say, after the weekend, when it came to a lot of those crashes, was young Corey Day driving the number 17 for Hendrick Motorsports this season. And the kid has a lot to learn. He definitely has a lot to learn when it comes to racecraft and racing IQ. I was just talking when I was talking about the truck race and talking about the Cup race and just Carson Hocevar in general. he really lacks in racing IQ and racecraft. It's very low. Corey Day, I'd say his racecraft and racing IQ when it comes to stock cars is even lower than Carson Hocevar. He's very raw. I've seen what he's been able to do on dirt and the sprint cars. I think he's a fantastic racer. I think he's a fantastic prospect for our sport. Definitely during the race, I was very harsh on him for sure. If you checked my Twitter, I was definitely a little harsh on Corey Day. I've thought about it a little bit more, and I still think those were some major, major mistakes. Like him, I think it was lap 3 when he took out Ryan Sieg, put Sieg up in the wall, and Ryan Sieg wrecked. And he didn't just wreck; he also totaled his brother's car as well, Kyle Sieg. So both of the Sieg brothers were out of this race very early, and I thought Ryan Sieg was going to be a big contender for the win. It was also his home racetrack, so that really sucked to see for Ryan Sieg. I know how hard he works, so that definitely upset me, and that blew me. I think the part of the race that definitely upsetted me the most is when he ended up taking out his teammates. He took out Carson Quaffle and Justin Allgaier, and I thought both of them had a fantastic shot at the win. And I thought Corey Day honestly had a decent shot at the win as well, but he said he lost a tire and he just couldn't react and just didn't have control of the car. I don't buy it personally. I don't buy that he lost a tire in that moment. I was watching the car. It didn't look like he lost a tire at all. He probably lost a tire after the wreck and just blamed it on losing a tire. So that's a lack of accountability. Or I'll give him the window, the small chance that it's just a lack of knowledge and a lack of feel of the race car, not necessarily knowing what he's dealing with when it comes to the car. And that all that stuff will come in time. I think a lot of people are already calling him a bust, and I don't think that's fair. He's just really getting into the stock cars. I think he's ran, maybe 10 to 15 races in total in a stock car so far, so he's very raw still, and I've definitely seen the speed come from him. He just doesn't have any racecraft, any racing IQ when it comes to stock cars, so it's just something he's going to need to work on. A lot of people might not remember when Tony Stewart came into the sport, when not Tony Stewart, my bad, not Tony Stewart. When Kyle Larson came into the sport, I think a lot of people remember when Kyle Larson came into the sport. He didn't really have much racecraft or much racing IQ either, but he had raw speed and raw talent. When you come from the dirt world, you're racing very short races. You're not racing 300, 400, 500-mile races in sprint cars. You're racing like 20 laps, 50 laps maybe. At the most for some places, maybe like 75 laps in one race. So it's a lot shorter of a race. You need to be 120% at the time. When NASCAR, you need to be a little bit calmer. You don't need to be 120% every single lap of the race. And I think that's something Corey Day is going to need to learn, like Larson did, because Larson was drinking through a water hose when he first came to the sport, when he was down in the, I think it was the Nationwide Series at the time when he first got here. He struggled a little bit in the Nationwide Series. He moved up to Cup, and he made those Ganassi cars look better than they've ever have before. But he almost seemed too fast for the target number 42. And then he moved over to Hendrick after everything that happened, him going on iRacing. After all that stuff, he moved over to Hendrick Motorsports, and he's just been a success story ever since, because I think the car is able to keep up with them. I think he's learned a lot when it comes to racecraft and racing IQ. I still don't think he has one of the best racecraft or racing IQs in the series, and we'll talk about why that is a little bit later, because he did have a huge error in the Cup Series race, the Auto Trader 400. But I just think Corey Day needs to be given a little bit more time. Give him to the end of the season at least and see how his performance is once we get down towards the end of the season, because I do think he is a very, very promising prospect. And with Rick Hendrick putting as much as he has into it, with Kyle Larson talking so positively of Corey Day, I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's not quite a bust yet and should be given some more time to really hone in on his craft. But at the same time, I think we've seen a lot of very successful dirt drivers try to make it work in NASCAR and just were unable to really make it work. Shane Meal is one of the first people that come to mind. Brad Sweet, he's another driver that comes to mind. Two very, obviously Shane Meal had a whole bunch of other issues besides his performance on the track, because he did show some promise on the track, but he got derailed. Well, he derailed himself. I shouldn't say he got derailed. He derailed himself. But nonetheless, Shane Meal, a lot of people would consider him a bust when it comes to NASCAR, because everybody knew how much talent he had. And the same thing with Brad Sweet. Everybody knew how much talent he had. Came over to NASCAR, struggled in the 38 Great Clips car, continuously got outrun by Casey Kane when Casey Kane would get in that 38 car, or any other driver, really. Brad Sweet didn't really have any success, but then he went back to dirt, started winning races again. So not everybody's going to be able to jump from car to car and have success in every single car they're in. Not every driver is Tony Stewart. Not every driver is Kyle Larson. Not every driver is an AJ Foyt or a Mario Andretti, where you can just jump from car to car to car and have success. It's going to take time with Corey Day. It's definitely going to take some time, and I hope that he does get a long leash, because I do see that raw speed, that raw talent there, but he definitely needs to improve, at least on destroying race cars. Don't destroy any more race cars. At least that. All right, before we end up getting to the very end of this race, I do want to talk about Rajah, because in my opinion, Rajah was the driver of the day. He was the fastest all day. He made a whole bunch of fantastic saves, just fantastic car control from Rajah. He's impressed me so far this season. I know we've ran 2 super speedways, restrictor plate tracks, drafting track, whatever the hell you want to call it. We've raced 2 super speedways, but Rajah has definitely impressed me in these first 2 races. And I don't think he's going to be necessarily a championship threat, but I do think he's going to make the playoffs. Not the playoffs, the chase. I got to get used to calling it the chase again. I do think he will make the chase, Rajah, but he's gonna get some wins, man. I think he's gonna get some wins. Not sure where he's gonna get them. I think he's gonna get some victories, and for some of these drivers, I think they have more success in other cars. It's just they have more of a better feel in other cars. I wouldn't say Rajah struggled in the trucks. He definitely didn't struggle. He definitely performed well, but I don't think he performed to the best of his ability in a truck. And I think in the O'Reilly series, he's obviously learned a lot more when it comes to racing IQ and racecraft. That has gotten a lot better since he's joined the 3 national series of NASCAR, the trucks, O'Reilly series, and Cup series. I think he's learned a lot, and he's taking that into this year, and I think he's going to get a couple wins. I think he's going to get 2 or 3 victories, I'd say, this season, make the chase. Like I said, he was the driver of the day. He was the driver of the day in HOT-Lanta when it came to the O'Reilly series. Didn't get the win that I think he was hoping for, and maybe even arguably deserved, because he was the best car all race long. But usually the best car isn't going to win at Atlanta or Daytona or Talladega unless you're Austin Hill. And even that didn't happen today. We'll get to the finish here in a second. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about Rajah and his performance in HOT-Lanta for the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. All right, let's get down to the very end of this race. And we had Austin Hill versus Ross Chastain on the back straightaway, coming to the checkered flag, right a half a lap away from the checkered flag. Ross Chastain had a hell of a run on Austin Hill, dove to the inside, and Austin Hill went for the block, and Ross Chastain wasn't going to hit the brakes. Hill was barely able to fit in front of Chastain. But you're going for a block to win the race. So he was clear of Chastain. Just Chastain decided not to brake, not to let off. I personally look at a wreck like that as a racing deal. That's definitely not how Ross or how Austin Hill looked at it, though. I feel like they kind of just went like that. They just pointed the blame at the other one. I think they both share about 50-50 each on the blame when it comes to the wreck. Also like to note right here, how about Austin Hill? Austin Hill was very quiet all race long, and all of a sudden he's leading on the last lap. It was the most quiet Austin Hill has ever been at a super speedway-esque track, I would say. And all of a sudden, it looks like he's in the prime position to get another victory on that last lap. I don't know where he came from, and all of a sudden took the lead. And I thought he was going to win. And luckily for my sanity, that didn't happen because you had Chastain and Hill wreck, which led to Sheldon Creed winning. And I'll talk about Sheldon here in a second. But Austin Hill, what else can I say? A great super speedway racer, but in my opinion, made slightly a bad block, but at the same time, it's last lap, trying to win. Do what you need to do to win that race. And Ross Chastain was feeling the same exact way, and it just didn't work out for either of them. I would also like to note Austin Hill made one of the best saves I've ever seen. It reminded me a lot. Some of you may remember when Kyle Busch saved the number 18 M&M's car in the Budweiser shootout all those years ago. I want to say it was like 2011, maybe 2010, something like that. And you saw the sparks flying, and he's on the apron at Daytona during the Budweiser shootout, and he saves it once, and then he saves it a second time. That save that Austin Hill made reminded me a lot of that. I think he was still able to come down with the top 10. Just chef's kiss. I was very, very impressed by that save. And Austin Hill also coming down into victory lane to celebrate with his former teammate, Sheldon Creed. I thought that was very cool as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about that last lap incident with Austin Hill and Ross Chastain? Who do you put more of the blame on with that incident? And how about Austin Hill once again getting into position to win at a super speedway after being so quiet all race long? Let me know. All right, let's get to our winner, because this was not just the moment of the weekend for me. It was probably my favorite moment I've seen in a very long time in NASCAR. I'm very fond of Sheldon Creed. I've met him at least a half a dozen times right now at this point. He's a very nice guy. I've hung out with him in the camping area. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. He's very chill. He's very down to earth. If I didn't know who he was, I would just think he's just a regular guy chilling with the boys. You know, he's an awesome dude. He puts a lot into racing NASCAR in specific. He's had to sell a lot of his stuff off. I've seen him make the posts to try to sell trailers and try to sell dirt car stuff, sprint car stuff, all that sort of stuff. And for him to finally get to victory lane, it's awesome. It's awesome to see. When we finished up last season, I was honestly worried that we might not see him back full time with Haas in 2026, because once again, he didn't win a race. And I don't know how much longer he has on his contract. I don't know if this is the last year he has with Haas, but he's going to make it count. He's going to make it count. And for him to finally get to victory lane after 15 runner-up finishes, it was awesome. Awesome to see him celebrate. I saw him on Instagram, on his wife's story, and on his wife's TikTok, on his own TikTok, just celebrating a storm. He had those Coors. He had a bunch of Coors. I was just so happy for the guy, man. I can't explain how happy I was for him. I've never been so happy for a person to win. It definitely wasn't my favorite moment I'm not going to sit here and say it was my favorite moment in NASCAR history, but it was the happiest I've been for a certain individual in NASCAR history, because Sheldon, I think, is going to open the door. I think it's going to open the door for Sheldon to get a lot more victories. I don't think he's going to go out there and win like 7+ races, but I think he's going to get probably 3 or 4 wins this season. I think Sam Mayer is going to have a strong year as well, especially with that Hendrick alliance. How about Sam Mayer after the race, by the way? Teammate of the year, going up to celebrate with him, just turns through the grass and rips off the splitter. That was nutty. He drove through the grass and just ripped off the splitter. I think it was Josh Berry that did it all those years ago at HOT-Lanta as well. That was wild. And I don't think it shouldn't be turf. Keep it grass. We don't need the turf. I don't know. That's just my opinion. If they switch to turf, I'm not gonna be pissed about it. But I think it should just stay grass. But that was hilarious. I know the I know his pit crew and his team back at the shop were very unhappy with Sam Mayer probably when that happened. Oh, that was wild. That was freaking wild. But back to Sheldon for a second. Just congratulations to Sheldon Creed, that whole 00 team. It was just a phenomenal moment, a phenomenal moment to see on TV. Just I was jumping up and down when this happened. I wish I filmed my reaction. I was in the kitchen cooking up, and I was watching the race at the same time, and I started jumping up and down. My hands hurt after he crossed the finish line because I was just clapping so freaking hard. I was so happy. I was so happy for him. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Sheldon Creed after 15 runner-up finishes, finally getting to victory lane? And right before we move off the O'Reilly Series race, I do have to quickly talk about the CW booth. My God, I was extremely impressed with the CW booth as a whole. Jamie Mack and Parker Kligerman have fantastic chemistry. They have just the greatest chemistry I've probably ever heard in the booth. I'm not saying they're the best two people ever in the booth. That's not what I'm saying. Don't get that misconstrued. But I'm saying those two individually just have such phenomenal chemistry with one another. They're just bouncing off each other throughout the whole entire race. They're making each other laugh. They're making me laugh listening to them. I was very impressed, and Parker always does a good job. I've been beating the drum when it comes to Jamie Mack that he needs to be full-time in the booth in the Cup Series. I've said this a bunch of times. I think the guy is so extremely smart. I think Jamie Mack is so freaking smart. He's so well-spoken. He's way more well-spoken than I am, or about anybody, or pretty much anybody that's in the booth with NASCAR. He's phenomenal. And then Adam Alexander. Some of you that have followed Adam Alexander and his journey in the NASCAR booth, I think he really struggled at first. I wouldn't say he was horrible. He wasn't horrible, but he wasn't very good either. I thought for a while he was one of the weaker commentators, but over the last, I'd say 2.5 years, roughly, maybe 3 years, he's greatly improved in the booth, and I'd say he's the best commentator currently in NASCAR. I think there's an argument to be made with Lee Diffie. I think Lee Diffie does a really good job as well, but as a play-by-play commentator, I think Adam Alexander is the best. Lee Diffie's probably a very close second, but then it's a far drop from second to third, in my opinion. Just great job, great energy in the booth. I loved the way they commentated that finish, especially the comparison of the CW O'Reilly Series booth versus the Craftsman Trucks Fox booth. The calls for the last two races on the last lap for Daytona and for HOT-Lanta have been phenomenal in the CW booth, while the Truck Series booth has been very bland, very confusing. Even I was saying drivers, because that's who's in the booth is drivers, and Jamie Little kind of talking over each other. I've tried to be very patient with Jamie Little. I don't think she does a very good job in the booth, but I think the opposite about Pit Lane when it comes to her. I think she's fantastic as a pit reporter, probably our best pit reporter in NASCAR, and Michael Jordan seems to have really warmed up to her as well, which is freaking cool. But just to get back to the CW booth real quick, just a fantastic job. I'm hoping they're able to keep this up all season, and I don't see a reason why they couldn't keep this up all season long. Like I said, Jamie Mack and Parker Kligerman have fantastic chemistry, and they also know when to shut the hell up and let Adam go and let Adam Alexander take over the call, because Adam Alexander, he gets you pumped up. It almost feels like I'm watching like a Formula One broadcast or something like that. Formula One racing, not nearly as entertaining as NASCAR racing, in my opinion. But if I had the video off and was just listening to the audio of a NASCAR race versus a Formula One race, the Formula One race sounds much more exciting because they're just so pumped up in the booth. And we don't get that a lot with NASCAR, and the CW booth, I think, has done a phenomenal job. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you think the CW booth has done so far in the first two races, and especially at HOT-Lanta? All right, let's get to the NASCAR Cup Series, the Auto Trader 400. We had Tyler Reddick once again win, go back to back. What a post race, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I first want to talk about the Kyles, and of course I'm talking about Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch. I don't know. We'll start with Larson because the Larson one, in my opinion, was completely wild. A wild move from Kyle Larson, diving all the way from the top to the bottom and totaled his race car. SVG went sliding through the grass. Shout out SVG real quick. Had a great race, got a top 10. Wrecked twice, slid through the grass on the front straightaway twice like Lightning McQueen, and still came back to get a top 10. So shout out to SVG. But Kyle Larson, I don't really know what he was doing there. I don't really have any excuse for him. I would say the only thing I could maybe slightly give him, but even in that case, why would you make such a dramatic move coming to the checkered flag of the stage? Is that Tyler Mon was his spotter, his long-term spotter. These two have great chemistry. Tyler Mon was even there at the Indianapolis 500 to be his spotter. He might, in my opinion, maybe wasn't as descriptive as he probably should have been in that situation, but at the same time, that's probably how it goes in every situation with these two, because some drivers like it when their spotters describe them literally everything, and some drivers hardly want their spotters to say anything. They want their spotters and their crew chiefs to be dead quiet for the most part, and some drivers want the most information possible. It really just depends on what the driver likes. And I don't listen to Larson's radio enough to really know exactly what he likes. Does he like to be over-described, over-informed on stuff, or does he just want to know the bar minimum and just focus on the driving? I'm not sure on that part. But nonetheless, he was told that he had a driver in the middle, and then he was told that he was clear of that driver in the middle, but here comes Shane Van Gisbergen with a huge run on the very bottom. Well, Larson coming off of turn 4, keep in mind, Larson is all the way up against the wall. He's all the way up against the wall running that Larson line. They're coming to the checkered flag of the stage. They're like, what, 100, 200 yards from the checkered flag of the stage. He's told that he's clear. Why would you dive all the way to the bottom if you're told that you're clear? You're just slowing yourself down at that point. You're potentially costing yourself a spot by making that really aggressive move when in your mind, you're not even necessarily next to anybody. You're not even in the position where you should have to go down and block somebody. I didn't understand it. I really didn't understand it. They call him hung money for a reason, and that was definitely a hung money moment for sure because he really stepped on his dick on that one. And it was a huge error. It was a huge error on Larson's part. Like I said, I put very, 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 like 1%, I would say, of the blame on Tyler Mon, and that's just purely on him not necessarily being as descriptive as he probably should have been. But like I said earlier, maybe that's how Larson likes it. Maybe Larson doesn't like it when Tyler Mon is very, very descriptive. So maybe it's 0% on Tyler Mon, but I'm giving the leeway. It might be 1% on Tyler Mon. But even in that scenario, why would you dive all the way from the top to the very bottom of the racetrack coming to the checkered flag of the stage? It just didn't make any sense to me. He ends up wrecking himself. He took out a couple other drivers ended up being involved in that as well. And then, of course, SVG went sliding through the grass. Just a huge mistake on Larson's part. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about this wreck with Kyle Larson and Shane Van Gisbergen off of 4 coming to the end of the stage? Now to get to the other Kyle, my favorite driver, Rowdy, Kyle Busch. And I'm going to be dead honest here. Kyle Busch went up high to try to block the run from Noah Gragson to get back into the line because he was by himself on the bottom coming off of turn 2, and he clearly had a slightly mishandling race car, was a little bit loose, and moved up right in front of Gragson. I wouldn't go as far to say that he cut him off, but it was pretty close to it, and Noah Gragson got into the back of him trying to get him back up to speed, ends up spinning out Kyle Busch. I would give probably 80% to 90% of the blame on Rowdy. I think I heard Rowdy's interview too. That's what Rowdy's going to do. Like I said, I've been a fan of Rowdy. I've been a fan of Rowdy since I was like 10 years old. So I've been through this song and dance. I'm well aware on how he does his interviews usually when it comes to wrecks like this. And I'm going to have to be honest. I thought it was more Rowdy's fault. I don't know what you want Noah Gragson to necessarily do in that situation. Maybe if there was nobody behind Noah Gragson, I'd probably put a little bit more blame on Noah. But if Noah lets off the gas, if Noah hits the brake to essentially let Kyle Busch in on that situation, Noah Gragson might be the driver that's wrecking into the inside wall. So he decided to give Kyle Busch a push because he thought that was the best option. And then Kyle Busch was unable to hang on to the race car. So in my opinion, that's what happened. Noah Gragson, he's in the chase right now technically too, which is crazy. I can't put that much blame on Noah in that situation. I don't know. I don't really expect for him to know what to do. And a lot of people that know Noah know that Noah wouldn't try to wreck Kyle Busch. Noah Gragson raced for Kyle Busch. He considered Kyle Busch his favorite driver. Every once in a while, it pops up on my timeline on one of my social medias of when he hops into line for a Kyle Busch autograph session and he pretends to be a fan just to surprise Kyle Busch. Very similar to what Chase Briscoe did to Tony Stewart at Daytona last week, if some of you saw that video. So I can't really put much of it on Noah. I got to put it on my boy Rowdy. Probably shouldn't have made that aggressive of a block right then and there, but that's just how it's going to happen. Kyle Busch falls deep into the points, outside the top 20 in points now because of that. So that's very unfortunate for Rowdy and Rowdy Nation. We had to put our toasters in the bathtub for Rowdy Nation. So yeah, hopefully he's able to come out in COTA this next week and figure it out. He almost won at COTA last year. Some of you know that I went to COTA last year and I had my heart ripped out of my chest when I saw Christopher Bell drive him down and make that pass. That was very painful. I've been to so many races and I've only seen Kyle Busch win one Cup Series race, and that was at Phoenix. I've seen Chase Briscoe win 3. So, yeah, it is what it is. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the Kyle Busch, Noah Gragson wreck? Maybe you see it differently. Maybe you think that Noah Gragson should have put himself at risk and just backed off for Kyle Busch. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. All right, let's get down towards the end of this race. Let's start with the first overtime finish. Hocevar and Christopher Bell on the front row. I got to put this all on Hocevar. I got to put 100% of this on Hocevar. I can't put any of that wreck on Bell because from the way I saw it, there was never a hole. There was never a hole to get into. There was never a hole for Hocevar to get into. I know what Hocevar is trying to do. He wants to get his first win, and I said earlier on in the show, some of you caught it earlier on in the show, that he just lacks a lot of racecraft, and I think that's ultimately what cost him the victory. He just doesn't really have much racecraft. I understand he wants to get immediately to the race lead in that situation. I get it, but if there isn't a hole, there isn't a hole, and it ended up costing himself some spots. He totaled Christopher Bell's car, maybe even made an enemy. I did hear Christopher Bell's interview after the race, and he pretty much said, I haven't seen the replay, so I'm just going to be quiet for now. So I'm very interested to see how he handles himself at COTA. At the same time, Christopher Bell reminds me a lot of Martin Truex Jr. He's just not the type of driver that's going to go out there and get payback and get revenge. I don't expect to see that from C-Bell. So even if C-Bell is very upset with the move that Hocevar pulled, which he should be, in my opinion, he should be pissed. He should be pissed that that move happened. I don't think he's going to do anything about it. I don't think he's going to do a single thing about it. But Hocevar, the Hurricane, I hate that nickname, by the way. Some of you have heard me say that. I freaking hate that nickname. That nickname is really, really dumb. I heard on the teardown, I think it was Jeff, I don't know if it was Jeff Gluck or Jordan Bianchi that came up with the nickname The Show. I like that. I actually like that nickname because he was the show. He was the show in that Cup race. He was pulling all the crazy moves. He had all the crazy runs. He wasn't scared to stick it in places where he probably shouldn't have. Pause. But it ended up costing him. It ended up costing him, I feel like, at the end of this race when it came to him versus Seabell at least. He's gonna get a win. He's gonna get a win very soon. Hopefully he continues to learn lessons and improve on his racecraft, because I definitely think he has improved on his racecraft since moving to the Cup Series, because I feel like when he was in the Truck Series, it was either every week or every other week he was wrecking somebody. I think he's chilled out a little bit in the Cup Series, but definitely is a little bit too overly aggressive. I think I heard Ryan Blaney say on Door Bumper Clear there's a big difference between being aggressive and reckless, and I think he's teetering on the reckless side of things. I think it's great to be aggressive. You need to be aggressive with this generation of car to win races, but sometimes you just need to woo-saw. And I think that's what Hocevar needs to do. Just a little bit, un poquito, just a little bit. If he's able to do that, I think we'll see him get a win very, very soon. But let me know your thoughts on Hocevar versus Bell. Let's continue the Hocevar talk, because let's get to the last laps of this race. We're going to be talking about Bubba and Hocevar here. Bubba Wallace, and I heard Freddie Kraft talk about it a little bit on Door Bumper Clear, so it sounds like Freddie takes part of the blame in this as well. But that wasn't a good move by Bubba. I understood why Bubba made that move. He had good speed. He probably didn't think that Reddick would have as much speed leading the field as he did, and he saw and heard over the radio how big of a run that Hocevar had, so he wanted to get in front of Hocevar, push himself out in front a little bit more, at the same time slowing down Hocevar, and then he'd be able to just dive right back down in front of Reddick. I think that was the idea, I would assume, that Bubba had in his mind, that Freddie Kraft had in his mind, and the whole 23 team had in their mind when it came to that situation. But it was just a huge error on Bubba Wallace's part. He just moved up too high. He moved his car way too up high and just left maybe a little bit over a car length. Like there wasn't very much room for Hocevar to fit it in, and Hocevar squeezed it right in the middle of a Bubba and Reddick, a 23-11 sandwich, if you will, with Hocevar being the meat in the sandwich, and made it work. If you've seen Hocevar race, you have to know that he's probably going to do something like that, and that's what he did when it came to Bubba. And Bubba Wallace, once again, arguably had the best car, like he did in Daytona. That's 2 straight weeks where he arguably had the best car in the field and didn't win the race, and both times he just looked so depressed, so distraught at the end of the race. I really liked Michael Jordan coming to him to show him some love at the end of both of those races, because he needed it. I really liked Bubba's interview after the race as well, because he could have buried Hocevar for what Hocevar did on the last lap, and I'll get to that part of this in a second. But just overall, I just feel a little bit bad for Bubba. At the same time, he did it to himself. He shot himself in the foot. He moved too high up the racetrack, left the perfect amount of space for Hocevar to just sneak in there. But let's get to the second part of this, because on the last lap, it looked like Bubba Wallace had created himself another opportunity. And ultimately, I don't know if this would have won him the race, but it definitely would have put him in a position where 23-11 probably would have gotten a 1-2 finish. Bubba Wallace had a huge run on the front straightaway, and Bubba Wallace pulled a very similar move that what Hocevar would do. There was maybe a little bit over a car length to the high side of Hocevar, so he decided to stick it on the high side of Hocevar, and Hocevar just flat out put him in the wall. I don't know if he was trying to put him in the wall or if it was a late block or whatever it was, but Hocevar just flat out put him in the wall, and it cost Bubba any opportunity at the victory. Me personally, if I was Bubba Wallace in that situation, I talked about how mature his interview is, which is a great improvement. I think he's really improved with the interviews. I think that's where a lot of people garnered their dislike for Bubba was his interviews. I think there's also a lot of other factors. People on Facebook, you know what I'm talking about. But I think there's a lot of other factors on why people don't like Bubba, but I would say the primary reason people don't like Bubba is the way he handles himself in his interviews. And I can see why people dislike that. Me personally, I didn't mind it just because he's putting his heart on his sleeve. And I think a lot of people had a lot of issues with his interviews because Bubba wasn't winning races. Like I said, I'm a Kyle Busch fan, grew up a Kyle Busch fan. Kyle Busch had very similar interviews to what Bubba Wallace had. And when Kyle Busch would have those interviews, I don't think a lot of people would give Rowdy a lot of shit for it. But when Bubba gave those interviews, since he's not out there winning races, plus a lot of the NASCAR fan base already didn't have a big like for, he's not a very popular guy. Let's be honest. He's not a very popular guy with a lot of NASCAR fans. So that was something to jump on and be like, oh, he gives really bad, immature interviews. But he puts his heart on his sleeve and he shows his personality. So overall, I'm okay with it. But in that interview, he showed a lot of maturity because what I would personally do in that situation, I would have been like Kyle Busch at Las Vegas all those years ago. I would have just strut my ass down pit lane like I was Vince McMahon and just socked him in the face like Rowdy did to Joey Logano at Las Vegas all those years ago. That's what I would have done because that was unnecessary. Like I said, I don't know if Hocevar was intentional. I doubt Hocevar was intentionally putting him in the wall. I think it was just a bad late block. But nonetheless, I think Bubba, if he didn't get blocked because he had such a huge run on the front straightaway, I think he would have had a chance at winning the race. At bar minimum, I think it probably would have been a 23-11 1-2 finish. So round of applause for Bubba to keep calm in that scenario. I think he's matured quite a bit. I think him having a kid has definitely matured him quite a bit. So good on Bubba. But Hocevar was the story. I've been talking about Hocevar for the last, 10, 15 minutes at this point. Hocevar was the show. He was the story of this race, especially at the end of this thing. And a lot of it had to do with Bubba. I don't think that's going to be a developing rivalry. It's something we might have to watch out for. I doubt it. But nonetheless, just a very entertaining finish of this race. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Hocevar versus Bubba? First of all, the situation on the back straightaway where Bubba just left the perfect amount of space for Hocevar to fit through, and Hocevar fit through it and threw Bubba back a couple of positions. Plus, let me know your thoughts on the front straightaway on the final lap about Hocevar putting Bubba Wallace in the wall. All right, let's get to the man of the hour, Tyler Reddick. I don't know what else I could say about him. Tyler Reddick, over the last 5 or 6 years, he's really shown that he's one of the best talents in NASCAR right now. You have him. I'm talking about just pure raw talent-wise. You got him. You got Kyle Larson. You got Christopher Bell. Now you have Connor Zilisch. A couple other drivers you could probably throw in that mix as well as just upper echelon talent, raw talent. And sometimes raw talent, it looks really good on track, like a Kyle Larson, or just to hone back earlier, raw talent could also look like Corey Day. And just really depends on your racecraft. It really just depends on your racecraft. It also depends on your mindset, I think, with a lot of these guys as well, because Reddick had a very tough year last year. He had a very tough year, whether it was his personal life or it was on the racetrack. Didn't win a race. Fresh off of the 2024 season he had, where he made it to the championship 4 in 2024. He won the regular season championship. He got a bunch of wins. And then 2025, got no wins, wasn't a threat in the chase at all. The playoffs at that point wasn't a threat and got eliminated. But he's came into this year a different Reddick in a way, but at the same time, the same Reddick. These are 2 super speedways, so I'm not going to give him everything, all the credit in the world. They are still 2 super speedways, but winning back-to-back super speedways is freaking difficult. It's really hard. And we also haven't seen a driver start off the season with 2 straight wins since Matt Kenseth back in 2009 when he won the rain-shortened Daytona 500 when he was in that Best Buy for it, I think, at the time. And I think Was that California at that time, or was it still Rockingham? Nonetheless, I think it was California at that time, but nonetheless, that doesn't really, might have even been Phoenix. It might have even been Phoenix. I forget if Phoenix was the second race. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But nonetheless, Reddick just impressed the crap out of me when it came to the finish of that race, and he drove from 20th to first and on that last restart, I think, or not the last restart, but the overtime before that. He zoomed through the field, just almost Dale Earnhardt-esque for sure. And I think that's what a lot of people want, not just the fans, but also the drivers want to see at Daytona Talladega. And I think there's a lot of truth in what a lot of these drivers and teams have said about handling. If you can get a lot of the handling out of these cars when it comes to Daytona and Talladega and make them tougher to drive, we might see a lot more racing like this. We might see a lot less fuel saving. So I think that's something that NASCAR is definitely keeping an eye on right now and looking to possibly make some changes in the future to come up with racing like that. I doubt it would be in time for Talladega here in a couple of weeks. Probably not in time. It probably won't happen this season. It'll probably be next season. I'm holding out hope maybe for Daytona for the cutoff race that they're able to figure something out for that. But nonetheless, just it's the hottest ticket in NASCAR. Dale Jr. said years ago that Bristol Motor Speedway was the hottest ticket in NASCAR. And then when Atlanta Echo Park Speedway started producing racing like this since the reconstruction and the rebuild of the racetrack, it's became the hottest ticket in NASCAR. It just provides great racing from start to finish, very entertaining, exciting racing. But at the same time, the drivers really enjoy it as well because it takes legitimate skill. It's not like what Daytona and Talladega are right now, whereas if you're just in the right spot at the right time, or if you're leading on the right at the right part of the race, you're probably going to win. At Atlanta, who knows what's going to happen? We've had some crazy finishes. We've had some crazy wrecks, and handling really matters. The setup really matters. Tires even matter to a certain degree. I loved it. I still prefer old Atlanta. I am one of those people that still prefer old Atlanta, mainly because of the racecraft, the strategy. I love drivers saving tires and using tires. I like to see the short run versus the long run, but that's just my personal preference. If it were up to me, I would have never reconstructed Atlanta. I would have just reconstructed Texas a second time and made Texas this super speedway track. It probably would have been a lot warmer for the second race of the season too, but that's Monday morning quarterbacking, or Monday morning Marcus Smithing, I guess you could call it. But yeah, I'm very impressed with Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I hope it continues to age because I feel like every time we get there, it's a little bit different. It definitely hasn't aged nearly as quickly as I thought it would. I've heard Dale Jr.'s comments on it as well. I don't think it's aged as quickly as he thought it would as well. It's, for the most part, not aging all that much. I've definitely noticed a little bit of age in the racetrack and a little bit different ways that these drivers have had to take Atlanta Motor Speedway or Echo Park Speedway. I'm going to still call it Atlanta, but I think it's probably the surface. It's probably the way they built the surface probably has it where this track hasn't torn up as quickly as other surfaces of Atlanta Motor Speedway have. So that's a little bit of a surprise, but just great racing. Just great racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Let me know your thoughts about the current version of Atlanta Motor Speedway. I did get a little bit sidetracked there. I've been watching too much Kenny Wallace. I got a little sidetracked there. Let's get back on track. Talk about Tyler Reddick, because Tyler Reddick, I'm just happy for the guy. Tyler Reddick is awesome. He's great. And also Michael Jordan being as happy as he is. I don't think I've ever seen Michael Jordan so happy. Even when he was in the NBA, he's so happy, man. He's just smiling from ear to ear. He's out there winning races. I've never seen him give so many interviews. Him and Jamie Little seem to really hit it off, because Jamie Little's able to give him a bunch of interviews. I think Jamie Little interviewed him, maybe 2 or 3 times during the weekend interviewed him 2 times at Daytona. So that's really cool to see Michael Jordan be a bigger part of our sport. He's becoming such a big part of our sport. I know he's not going to probably be there every single week of the year, but he was at a good amount of the races last year. I would say anywhere between a third to half of the races last season. I would expect maybe even more than that this season, especially with the way the season has started off. It's just really cool to have MJ be a part of this sport, and Tyler Reddick potentially becoming a championship contender makes it even more entertaining, even more exciting, and it brings in a lot more people. It brings in a lot of people outside of our sport that are in the sports world. Like, we're getting talked about on a lot of different programs and channels and YouTube channels and Spotify's and all over the place on social media that were never really talked about because Michael Jordan is winning races as a team owner in NASCAR, which is huge. It's huge for the sport. It's huge for the sport. And Tyler Reddick, he's a great story, especially in this race. He was involved in a wreck earlier on in the race. I think he got caught up in that Logano-Hamlin wreck where Logano just squeezed Hamlin off of the corner, ended up wrecking Hamlin, and the whole right front of Reddick's car got ripped off. I didn't think he was going to compete. If some of you saw my NASCAR post-race Reddit video, I kind of compared his car at Atlanta to Dale Jr.'s car at Martinsville all those years ago. When Dale Jr. tore off, I think it was also the right front. When he tore off the right front at Martinsville, his car handled a lot better because the tires were able to cool down. The brakes were able to cool down because you were able to get air to the tire. I don't think that's what happened. I don't think that's what happened at a super speedway. Overall, I think that's going to hurt you. And I don't know if it really, overall, usually I'd say that's going to hurt you, but I don't know. It didn't seem like it really affected Tyler Reddick's car. He didn't have a whole right front on the car. That die cast is going to be interesting as well from Lionel. That's going to be an interesting die cast to get. I don't think it really affected him. And he ended up going to victory lane. He did that reverse burnout. How about that reverse burnout, huh? I've never seen a reverse burnout before. I did see a clip of Kurt Busch doing a reverse burnout at Phoenix Raceway, but that was a little different. He did it up against the wall. This was like a legit burnout, burning it down the front straightaway. That was wild. That was really cool to me. If you keep on winning, you got to find different ways to celebrate, I guess. So that was freaking cool to me. Just overall, a great moment for our sport, a great story. I don't care if you don't like Michael Jordan. I don't care if you don't like Tyler Reddick or Denny Hamlin or Bubba Wallace or anybody over at 2311 Racing. You have to admit, if you are a NASCAR fan, you have to admit Michael Jordan winning in NASCAR is fantastic for the health of our sport. I've seen us been talked about more in pop culture over the last 2 weeks. In total, more over the last 2 weeks than I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years. Just in the last 2 weeks, accounts are coming out talking about NASCAR that have never talked about NASCAR before. And then Tyler Reddick had his Daytona 500 tour after winning the 500, and that's a tradition that happens every year. But I feel like this year he was on even more shows than what usually happens. It's just great. This is a great time to be a NASCAR fan. I think a lot of people, including myself, laughed at the Hell Yeah campaign, and I think that's really working well. We're trying to get back to our roots at least a little bit. I don't think we're going to go all the way back to our roots, clearly, because we still have the chase. We don't have 36 races, full season points, which is what I'm a fan of. I would like full season points, but I'll accept the chase. It's just a great time to be a NASCAR fan. Happy for Reddick. Happy for 2311 Racing, and they legitimately have a chance of going 3 in a row because Tyler Reddick, I don't think he's finished outside the top 5 at COTA in all the years they've been there. He's won there once. I think he's only won there the one time. Nonetheless, he could win 3 in a row. We could have 3 straight races where Tyler Reddick and Michael Jordan go to victory lane. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's exactly what I want. I want Kyle Busch to go to victory lane. I would love to see Connor Zilic get his first win. I'm big on Connor Zilic, and he's had a very tough start of the year. But I wouldn't be mad at all to see Tyler Reddick win 3 straight races to start off the season. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Michael Jordan winning again? Tyler Reddick going back-to-back in the celebration that he had, the reverse burnout. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. All right, that will actually do it for this week's edition of Car on the Hauler, post-Atlanta, post-Echo Park Speedway. A great weekend of racing. We've had two great weekends of racing to start off the year. Now we're heading into Circuit of the Americas for the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, while the Truck Series is actually going to be in Florida. First time NASCAR is going to St. Petersburg, and it's going to be a doubleheader weekend with the Craftsman Truck Series and the IndyCar Series. I would also like to note one of my favorite series is also there, the MX-5 Cup Series. So I recommend you tune in to all of that throughout the weekend. But let me know your thoughts about anything we talked about here today on Car on the Hauler. So hope to see you next week or later in the week. I do videos pretty much every day on this channel. Also check out the Pace Car Boys channel for Hit the Pace Car every week, where I chat with my buddies Corey and Tyler about the weekend topics, plus a couple of news stories throughout the week. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about all of that. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry saying peace.